Well, it's about time to start. Don't know if I have any live viewers at this point. I know I didn't make it last week. I didn't feel very good. One of the problems with getting older is there's more of the time that you don't really feel good. Let's see, we've got Radio Dad 777 says hi Dave. Al says hello from KG5 KRQ Rockport, Texas. I'll be back in just a minute. Okay, better equipped. Put that over there. Okay, let's see. Oh, we've got a few people here now. Hello, hello. I'm a little late getting this up. And over here. Okay. Hello to everyone. I'm Dave Casler, amateur radio call sign KE0OG, here with another weekly live stream on the Ask Dave channel. And for those of you who want to view older live streams, you can go to my channel, which is youtube.com/Dave Casler, all one word, DAVECASLER. And that will take you to my home page, and some videos start blaring in the background. But in the menu line, there's one that says live. And you can look in there and see all the past live streams. They're all there. So, I've got a few things to show you tonight that I think you'll enjoy. Let's see, KG5 KRQ, Rockport, Texas. Mary, hello Mary. Hello Dave and chat. Terrence, to Echo Zero, India Papa Kilo. Hi Dave, hope you and Loretta are both well. I put my glasses on so I can see this. There we go. It's almost 2 in the, it's 10 to 2 in the morning in London. Radio Dad is here. Chuck K6PWC, hi Dave and all Augies. Rich Tudor, hi Dave. KE0EOB, Ricky from Missouri. Oh, I've got to show you something. See if I remember where I put it. Oh, this is in Illinois. We were in need of an RV park, and we stopped at this one here. It has its own dragon, and if you put a quarter in the slot, it'll breathe fire for you for a second or two. Actually, although it was a very bleak RV park, no hint of a tree or anything, and you had to go over to the hardware store across the street and down a bit to get checked in. It was very inexpensive too, and my wife found a plush toy that she simply could not live without. So that was at the hardware store there. Let's see. Chuck, K6PWC. Rick Tudor, hi Dave, KE0EOB. Ricky from Missouri, all right. W2AEW, hello and thank you. W2AEW has one of the most technical ham radio YouTube channels that there is. And we'll take it right on up to extra level. He does some marvelous work testing receivers. In some cases, I think better than the ARRL's lab does. And he's very, very picky about doing that right. And he doesn't get specially done over radio. He just buys the radios and does the review so they can be completely impartial. W2AEW, my hat is off to you. This is Alan in New Jersey. Chris Wilson, good morning from Sydney, Australia, from VK2NAP. Chuck, K6PWC. Dave, I've been watching your videos on the Cushcraft HV4E antenna and have a question. Did you have to rewire the coils? No, I did not. I heard that some hams were needing to resolder the connections. I saw that too. I think MFJ is trying to wind its business down as fast as it can. In fact, they said they didn't have any more, but DX Engineering claimed they had some. Let's check that out. Let's see, it's HV4E. HV4E. Let's go to, whoops, let's see. We got to do it this way. First, we have to go here. And then we'll go here to DX Engineering. And I don't need any of that. And we're looking for HV4E. Cushcraft. And they have more than 10 available. They do have them. It's one of the better multiband verticals I've tested. And this part in the middle that has all the coils is already completely put together, which makes it very nice. Now, obviously, if you can put a dipole up, you're in good shape. This does need radials. So just get some wire from Home Depot and throw out some radials on the thing. I think we threw out 8 10-foot radios. And the thing worked like a charm. It was maybe 3 dB down from my reference antenna, which is the Step IR, Big IR. It's a vertical. And it's full size vertical on every band. The way it band switches is it moves a copper tape up and down inside a tube so it's the right length for a vertical antenna at that frequency. It's very good. Yes, I've heard the same thing about some people. These were hastily built and they need to resolder the connections. They just crimped the connections on the end of the wire and didn't take the varnish off like they should have. Good evening, Dave. Thanks for answering my Spurs question the other day. No problem at all. I think we put that in a video, which may or may not be released yet. David Cowden, WD0HHU. Dave in Denton, Texas. Chris Wilson, I have a 13-meter carbon fiber squid pole I grabbed cheap, but it is too conductive for a tuned length of wire. Been experimenting with a 44-foot length of wire, but finding it hard to tune for 7 megahertz. That's the problem with carbon fiber. You almost have to insulate each section from each other, because carbon conducts electricity. Okay, On Lee, hello. N7NH, hello, Dave and everyone. Petro Marias, K6MIL, greetings from Oxnard. I've been there. I used to live in Simi Valley. Mike DG, Chuck, I just ordered one from the DX Engineering about 2 weeks ago, and mine looks perfect. Good. You know what's possible is that the folks at DX Engineering heard about the problem and just pulled all the ones out of stock and fixed them. That's, I think, consistent with the kind of people they are. They're good people there. Okay. Scott Jefferson has got a cup of coffee and a monkey. Chris Wilson, my Z-Match tuner I made will tune the antenna 20 meters and 80 meters, but not 40. I need to revisit the Z-Match design. It would be nice to use the carbon fiber pole. It is nice and light and 13 meters long. Yeah. I don't have any real experience with carbon fiber poles, so I can't really say much. David Cowden says, I have a question about table 22.44 about wire resistance from the ARRL handbook, but which year? I have the ARRL 100th edition, and that table doesn't. Let's take a look. Oops, that's not the right, yes it is the right place. And we'll bring up the ARRL. I've got the 2023 handbook here. Let's see, content. Unfortunately, this doesn't show on the live stream. Let's see, I have table 22-44. Well, let's go to chapter 22, Safe Practices, and go to page or table number 44. 22.3. That's 22.4. Construction techniques. Let's see what we can find in here. We'll look at 22 or 23-44 because they often keep the same. Here's 23.5. No, the 3D printer, I once made a printer like that, but it was 2D. I don't think there is a table 22. Let's look up wire construction techniques. Index wire. Wire resistance 4.2. 4.2. Well, let's go try 4.2 and see what we get. Well, resistance of wires. This doesn't appear to have that table either. There, in previous handbooks, has been a table, usually in the construction techniques section that shows different kinds of coax losses, everything like that. And it was just full of circuits. Let's look up, go back to the index and look. I'm sorry this doesn't show on there. I would have to set it up as a scene. Coaxial cable. Yeah, it's different now. Let's see if I've got an older version. They move things around. That is the same thing that just really makes it hardest for me. ARRL software 2021 handbook. Content 23 construction T. Oh, 22 component data and references. And here's a bunch of tables. List of tables. Let's do a search on wire. Resist. Component data, resistors, capacitors, inductors, transformers, semiconductors, tubes, wire, miscellaneous. Okay, this is diode transmission tubes. They used to have, oh, they've still got part of, this used to take pages and pages and pages and pages for that, those lines. Copper wire specifications 2244 is exactly the table that you mentioned. So 2244, and this is which issue? Okay, front matter. Front matter. The 2021 edition, the 98th edition. And the chapter 22 is component data and references. And that is a very handy chapter to have, that everything collected in one place and made it very easy to find things. And I don't think they have all of this collected in one place anymore. That changed. Don't like it. Okay. A Z-match tuner. I'm not sure what that is. Yeah, I have the ARRL 100th edition too, in print form. Let's see, once I get it working, I'd be keen to compare it to the 10-meter fiberglass bowl with an end-fed wire for 20. There you go. John Ward, hello Dave from W30J. OJ. What a surprise. Good. Robert Hosford says hi. Chris Wilson, the goal with my Z-match was to be able to match almost anything between 7 and 30 megahertz. I put a tapped secondary to allow me to select different ratios of primary to secondary for different loads. Yes, and that's what you'd want to do. But on that 44 foot of wire with the carbon fiber, there is a hole in the tuning between 5.5 and 8.5, just can't get there. 10 to 30 megahertz, though fiddly, is achievable down to 1.1. let me show you the standard schematic for an antenna tuner these days. This is what almost all modern antenna tuners look like. There is a capacitor and an inductor, which goes down to ground, and then another capacitor and out, and these are all variable. This is called a T-match, and it will tune almost anything, very wide range tuner. Now, the more inexpensive tuners have taps on the coil, and you use a switch to tune to these different taps. And the switch, you can tune it. Like on my little MFJ 993B. No, that's the wrong one. My MFJ, it's the MFJ Versa tuner, this one right here. Okay, you can see this is a switch. Now I know from experience if I'm going to tune on 40 meters, I need the inductance on D. And then you tune back and forth between these. You get it to lowest SWR with that, or lowest reflected power. Then you tweak it with this, and then you go find another one, and finally you get to the point where further tweaking doesn't do any good, and that's your good match. I want to show you something I just got in the mail. Where is it? It's not there. It's not that. Had it in my hands a moment ago. Here it is. There is a antenna tuner design that's open source. This source was created by N7DDC, and this is supposedly a 100-watt automatic antenna tuner. And it's got a little switch on the back where it's automatic versus manual. And on the front, there's just a button that starts the tuning, and there's some kind of data on the display. I've not yet tried this. And very interesting. This was built by Guzizu, which is quite the weird name. But they've sent me quite a few of their little things. They tend to rebuild things that are open source and sell them. I've got a shortwave radio from them. I did a JPC 12 antenna from them that worked very well. And I don't know, I guess I kind of like the people. So anyway, now would be a good time to insert ads. I'm not going to insert the ad. Unless you want it. Let me know if you want to add. I'll put an ad in. Okay. Hi, John Ward. Chris Wilson with a goal with the C match. And on that 44 W2 AEW, sometimes adding or removing some coax will result in rotating the impedance around the Smith chart sufficiently to put it in a range that the Z match will work. Well, there's your answer. You may want to add, like, a few feet at a time. Chris says, I'm using a VNA at the tuner at the base of the antenna, no feed line. The feed line would go into the tuner at the base of the antenna. Okay. Is it an automatic tuner? That's really kind of what you want, because every time you change frequencies, you're going to have to retune. Manticore, or put the counterpoise on the tuner. Manticore, hello Dave, I've been working a lot of DX from my truck using a Yaesu FT891 into a Yaesu ATAS antenna. Loving it, and best wishes from Doug and for CQD in Florida. Night Monkey Dave, you're the man. Thank you for what you do for us. Well, I try. Mike, AC1TS is the extra coax adding capacitance. It is certainly adding reactance. I have seen people, there's a guy in Australia, VK3, I can't remember the rest of his call sign. He likes to make homemade mag loop antennas, and for the capacitor, he uses a piece of coax because it's got so many picofarads per foot. Then he's got two copper-clad panels near each other that he just kind of slides past each other till he gets to the exactly the right, because the capacitance tuning on a mag loop, small HF loop technically, is critical. Okay. Chris Wilson, the idea was for, okay, VK3YE is the mag loop man. Thank you very much. He makes quite a few videos. He likes to go pedestrian portable or pedestrian mobile on the beach. I guess he lives very near the beach. And so he'll have this mag loop out here behind him coming out of his backpack. And he's got a Yaesu radio in there with a battery. And he likes to talk to people, call CQ and so on as he goes back and forth on the beach. And seems to really be into it. I've watched quite a number of his videos. The idea was for operating portable. I could throw up a random length of wire and get a match at the base of the antenna wire, not have to worry about line losses. And that is certainly a valid thing to do. I did a video at one point where I just took a hunk of wire up to the top of one of the antenna poles, and on the bottom I put my MFJ automatic antenna tuner. I had to put a battery out there with it, and so I had it tuned directly into the antenna. And at first I had a little trouble because I realized I had the tuner on in the radio, in the 7300, and the two were fighting with each other. So when I turned off this tuner, that thing snapped right to it. And yes, you can use that method if you've got a wide range tuner and there is no feed line. There is just, it feeds the antenna directly. If you want it to do it automatically, you either need to use what Manticore does with the Yaesu ATAS antenna, because there's a tuner right there at the base of the antenna. And a lot of companies, LDG makes a remote antenna tuner that actually puts the DC on the coax, which with what is called a bias T. And anyway, you can tune it from in the shack or wherever you are, and it will tune the antenna directly. And because it's directly feeding the antenna, you don't have the high losses that can come from high SWRs going through our less than purpose lossy coax. Okay. Chris says, okay, Peter Parker. Yes, Peter Parker. He is Spider-Man. Chris Wilson uses an FT891, 5 watts. Yeah. It says, Mike, as long as the coax is not part of the antenna or counterpoise, then the coax only changes the impedance and not the visuar. Okay, yeah, if you get common mode currents on the outside, let me draw that for you, what he's talking about here. And I've got an eraser somewhere. Here is the problem. Let's suppose you've got a piece of coax, and here's the inner wire, and it goes to a remote tuner. Now, ideally, this should be grounded. The ground rod should be. And then you can have come out here basically anything. Random wire, long wire, whatever. Now the problem is that this is only half the solution. It's going to want to find the other half. And if you put a good ground there, it will do that, but it will also tend to send what's called common mode current on the outside of the coax. Now, when you look at a piece of coax, and I've got a handy one right here, this is LMR 400. Let me get it up here. Okay, you see inside is the copper wire, there's the insulation, and then there's one heck of a lot of shielding. The thing is completely wrapped in aluminum, and then there's a shield put on the outside of that, and look how much wire is in that shield. The purpose for this is that whatever RF goes into the coax stays in the coax. However, and think of skin effect and stuff like that, your actually the electric field, the power transits through the entire coax, including this thing here, the insulation. And because of skin effect, you're only seeing the inside of the shield. The outside of the shield does not see the inside of the shield up to, so many dB of loss. And then you'll have common mode current flowing down the outside. Now, the way you can get rid of that is with an RF choke like a toroid or several, or you take the coax and wrap about 9 turns, but that's close to 25 feet, and at $1.50 a foot, that's expensive. It's easier to get the little things, toroid beads that you can slip over the end of this thing, because you want to stop that common mode current in its tracks. Otherwise, the remote tuner is essentially using it as a counterpoise. So if you stop that there, then it's forced to use the actual ground rod, which of course is tied in underground with your other ground rods, and so on. So, several ways of doing it if you want to do the remote tuner. Okay, you want to keep those. All this does, it's outside the coax, okay? It will choke. In other words, provide a very high impedance for the common mode currents that are coming down on the outside, and then they will not go any further. Well, you may to do that in steps, but still at HF, this is a very short distance, okay? This is the way my hex beam antenna works. A hex beam is a balanced antenna. The way they keep the common mode currents from going down the wire is a whole bunch of ferrite beads, okay? Now, this will then, and this does not affect what is inside the coax. That's the nice thing about it. You can roll up coax like this. Now, you can't do that with open wire line or anything, window line, because if you have window line, and I'm going to look end on at the window line, okay, there's the RF field goes all around it. It's strongest in here, but there's enough out here that if there's a piece of metal, like a mast, that's out here within a few inches, it will start to feed the mast, and it will unbalance the transmission line, and an unbalanced transmission line will radiate. And you don't want your transmission line to do anything other than transmit your signal or transfer it, and you want your antenna to do the radiation. So that's a bunch of stuff in my old age scribbling here about that. And correct me if I'm wrong. Okay, let's see. When I said so, hooked up the, where are we here? To make it tunable. All right. I just wanted to get on the air, so I took my 6 9-foot sections of drawn aluminum, extended it up to about 33 feet, added the base-loaded quarter-wave whip on top, hooked up the original T240-43 Ballon, and it tunes 20 in the bottom half of 40, no tuner. Very good. You've got a quarter wave, at 33 feet, you've got a quarter wave on 40. With the additional match, of course, you've got, I think you're getting like a 5/8 or something in there. I did get a match of sorts with a counterpoise and no ground state connection. Okay, so that works. I just wasn't able to repeat the success. Okay, that is what I was getting at. Okay. It's been a fun exercise. I've learned a lot, even if it's what doesn't work this time. Yes, as W2AEW says, you learn a lot more from your failures than you do your successes. Another way to learn is to teach. I have learned an awful lot building videos for this channel, because either I get corrections via the comments or I look at it. Sometimes I look at my old videos and cringe. You know, I've just learned a little bit more since then. Now, I got to show you something else that I've got here that's just cool. This right here is a wooden box. And you open it up, and inside is a radio loosely modeled after the World War II paraset that were parachuted down to spies and stuff. It's not finished. I was doing the final hookup to the phones right here, and I broke the jack itself, and I searched, and I do mean I searched everywhere. I did not have another one. Well, now I have 10 of them. And one goes in here, and I'm using this. This is the one that broke. And this is the new one that's going to go in there. And you can see it's got 5 connections on it. 3 of those are tip, ring, and ground. And I'm only going to put it between tip and ring. Okay, and then this comes up through the top this way. Oh man, through here, and I got a phone place to put in the headphones, and it wires through both sides of it, so it's mono, of course. Okay, there's a built-in key like there was on the Paraset radio. It's a regenerative receiver just like the Paraset, and it has a chicken head knob here which turns from off to receive to transmit. So it's not key down for transmit. And there's even a little dial light here. This is one of those LEDs where you can choose either red or green. And this is a little circuit right here that allows you to put a crystal across this, and it will oscillate enough for you to tune and find your frequency. So you've 0 beat with your crystal, and then you stick the crystal in here. And there are 2 crystals that came with the radio, one for 7030, the other one for 7122, which are both QRP CW watering holes. And I've got this old 7037 crystal that I picked up at a ham fest, and I have no idea if it works. We'll find out. Now they've got just little tiny crystals in here, so they've got a little circuit board you can put the crystal on and then wire it in so it's sort of like a real crystal. So it is, as they say, reminiscent of the old spy sets used during World War II, which of course were all tube. Let's get this thing back in here. And so I'm hoping to get this thing working. I've got that one more element to put in. Another thing that I've got, I did one video on this already. This is the from HF Signals in India, and now they've just announced some big tariffs on India. This is the ZBITX radio. I did one video. I've done a lot of work with it since. I've had two very successful single sideband QSOs with this, 5 watts, okay. And it even comes with battery holders for rechargeable lithium-ion cells. You turn it on by plugging it in, and you get this screen here, and it's run by Raspberry Pi, so it takes a little while for the Raspberry Pi to boot up. It has a place up here where you can put an HDMI cable in and take that to a real monitor and see not only this repeated there, but also you can do a bunch of other things directly with the terminal mounter that's in there. Okay, so now the one problem I have with it is there's one control. And the problem with one control is that you've got to remember what you last set the control for. So anyway, I've been playing with this. Like I said, I've had 2 successful QSOs, one with Illinois and one with, I think it was Louisiana. And this is my microphone for it that I made for previous BITX. Ashar Farhan, who does this, has this idea that it's easy to build enclosures and stuff, so he'll give you the electronics. Well, us Americans like to put things in cabinets that are already made. This is my little push-to-talk switch right there. And this is my microphone, and it plugs in, and he uses, fortunately, the same microphone circuitry for all his radios. So, and this has a built-in sound card, actually the Raspberry Pi, so that it can be used. It has FT8 built in, and a fairly long instruction manual for it. And the problem is it's only got about that much. Well, let me just go back to the normal view here. It's only got about that high a piece of real estate on the front panel as the incoming signals scroll down. And, you know, I've noticed on FT8 that if it's busy, you're going to scroll way past. So it scrolls on off the window there. And I haven't yet successfully made a contact with that. Next step is to attach it to the regular computer and do FT8 with WSJTX. So that is coming. Another thing I was talking with a patron with was about the time for the overhead again. Was about the ZS6 BKW multiband HF antenna. There's a better picture of it right there. I've never had one. I've never tried it. So what I'm lacking to build it is a 1-to-1 current balun and 40 feet of window line. So I'm going to make one. I have the poles. Now I have 2 poles. One's 30 feet, one's 35 feet. And they're far enough apart you can put a full-size 80-meter dipole between them. So I'm going to put this between them and review it like I would review any other antenna and see what I've got. Another thing I'm going to do, and this relates to good old EMP, I've told you all about this little device from EMP Shield, which is for ham radio, and it can clamp the circuit within a nanosecond. See, the reaction time less than a nanosecond. For a lightning arrestor, it's much longer. So the lightning arrestors protect against lightning, but not necessarily EMP. So these people are really into it. I gave a presentation on this at Pacificon last year and at Albuquerque, and I've been asked to give it again down there. And let's see, one other place. I didn't do it at Dayton. I've got to put a presentation together for Dayton this year. Anyway, this right here is the same kind of thing. They make stuff all the way up to the great big stuff the utilities use. This is a very heavy-duty little thing that will take care of a solar panel array up to 48 volts DC. Mine is about 36 volts DC, which is the no load voltage. So this connects, this green one goes to ground, the red and black go to the regular red and black, and then this will clamp within a nanosecond and head off any EMP before it gets in there. So I thought I'd try it. Also picked up, I purchased this and this from the League. I met Salty Walt at Dayton, and this is as much an art book as it is a antenna design book. Okay. And then this is a book I've heard about many times but didn't have a copy of. So I took this chance to go ahead and order it. It's a classic experimental methods in RF design. And it's one big book. So I'm going to use that as a reference book. And then here's some HF dipole antennas for ham radio. And so I'm going to take a look at these. Maybe we'll make some videos out of them. Okay. And the other little thing I've got, I need to review this. Things are coming in here to review faster than I can review them. This is a little shortwave radio. And when I say little, I mean little. And it turns on. And there you go. It's on an FM channel right now. But this is a general coverage receiver that goes up to about 150 megahertz. Okay, so I'm going to review that. They've got a nice little loop antenna that you can use for direction finding. And they've got a whip antenna in there too. So that's coming up for review. And they're going to send me another one. They want me to review this and the slightly bigger model together. Now, this other project I've been working on, where'd it go? Disappeared. There it is. This right here is the QMX Plus. Okay. And this right here is a surface mount component. It happens to be the driver for the transistor finals, the 5-watt rig. This is the driver, and it has a bunch of built-in tests. And I did one of the tests, and it showed that this thing had burned out right here, that was not working. So I, first of all, had to get some. Amazon's as good a place as any. And I got more than one, knowing how I can break things. But that is a replacement, and now the thing seems to work. So I've got a lot of testing to do with this. Now, one thing I have to talk about, both the HF Signals radio and the QRP Labs radio don't want any more than 12 volts. So I wired this for the 9-volt option. And this is something I picked up on eBay. Okay, it's a 12 volt to 24 volt input and an output at 9 volts. So the HF Signals will take 6 to 9 volts, And this right here will take 9 volts. This only difference is the way the final output transformer. If you run 12 volts on these, you need to wind this coil differently. That's the only difference. And look at all those toroids that I had to wind one by one. It was such fun figuring out how many turns I'd actually put on each one. I had to take photographs of them under a microscope, print it out, and then literally label the turns, 1, 2, 3, 4, so that I knew I had enough turn, or the correct number of turns on that. The thing is, it covers all of HF and 6 meters, and so you've got some low-pass filters. The way this thing works is kind of interesting. These transistors are run Class E. Now, Class E means they're either on or off. And what you're using is pulse width modulation. So what comes out of here amplified is a series of pulses. So it's either a 1 or 0, and it's a square wave. Okay, a square wave, this is kind of intriguing how this works. A square wave is a periodic wave. And Fourier's theorem says that any periodic waveform, note that, any periodic waveform can be represented by a sum, sometimes an infinite sum, of sine waves at harmonic frequencies. Well, it turns out a square wave has the fundamental plus the 3rd harmonic, the 5th harmonic, the 7th harmonic, the 9th harmonic, and so on up in decreasing amounts. So if you feed a square wave through a filter that doesn't reflect the stuff not taken, but absorbs it, whatever, you only get the fundamental out. And what is the fundamental? It's a sine wave. Remember, it's a series of sine waves. That's Fourier's theorem. So what all these little things are here are filters for different bands. Okay, you don't want like a 40 meters. The 3rd harmonic is 15 meters. That's in the ham bands. So for 40 meters, you got to really filter it so that you don't get that other stuff on the other bands. So he's got all kinds of little filtering and switching schema. There's little diodes here, 1N4148s. They could be 1N914s also, because they're just switching things. Very cool how you can switch back and forth between these things electronically. And what he doesn't say a whole lot about, but look at that, that is a microprocessor where he does all the software-defined radio stuff. So all the surface mount components are mounted, and like I said, I blew out this component somehow, and so I replaced it. I'm not real good at surface mount, but I've got the tools to do surface mount rework. And what you need basically is a special heat gun that gets extraordinarily hot. A little pair of tweezers, pick the thing up, take another pair of tweezers, put down, there's a kind of solder paste that you can get. It's solder mixed with the resin core, which has been turned into a paste. It is a paste anyway. Put the two together, you put a little dab in, by little I mean the tip of a grain of rice on the pads for that thing. Put the component down, and with the heat gun, heat it until it melts the solder. And the flux, of course, cleans everything, so on. And that's how they put surface mount components on it. quite an art, and not one that I'm really good. Okay, let's see here. We've had quite the conversation with W2AEW. I should pay more attention to him. I learned a lot from him. Okay, added up the base loaded and balance tunes 20. Boys, one name will repeat quiz. Okay, that is what I was getting at. It's been a fun exercise. Yes, okay, I think that's where we were. Managed to get into Minnesota on 20 watts last night on that big aluminum stick. Yes, good judgment comes from experience, and experience comes from bad judgment. Well put. Chris Wilson, or as a pilot, I would say good judgment comes from experience, and experience comes from near misses. Okay. If you actually take the bad judgment too far, you're not going to learn anything. Maybe other people will. Okay. And so John C. is greeting us from Cape Cod. Chris Wilson, too true. I have lots of education. Smart people learn from others' mistakes. I prefer those lessons, especially the ones that hurts. If we are smart, we learn from each other, but it takes real work to persuade a youth that he ought to learn from others. As a boy, my chin was right at the height of the top of the stove. And my mother had warned me away from the stove many times. And one time I put my chin right up on the top, right on a heating element. The scar is still there. My beard won't grow where the scar is. So that's where I trim my beard, is right at where the scar is. So I learned by doing. My dad tells me I was very interested in electronics when I was a kid, and once I wired a bunch of a serial string of Christmas lights. I wired them together and plugged them into the wall, and poof! And that's where I went back to the Alfred J. Morgan book, whatever it was I was looking at, that I had borrowed from the children's section of the Glendale Public Library. Back then, you could ride your bicycle without a helmet across town to a library and not have anybody think anything of it. Anyway, that's what I did, and discovered the difference between series and parallel by doing. Dad claims that I first discovered electricity by sticking a screwdriver in the socket and touching it. Now that may be so, but I don't remember that particular incident. He said I came away with a great respect for what was in the wall. So, okay, let's see. Chris says Australia's in the inner west, so pretty small courtyard, but we're on a hill, nice coverage east. Good. Chris, Ohio, well, RBN in Canada is great. Chris says, I'm thrilled to get into ZL. VK6 is further from me than New Zealand. Larry Fields from Manila. Larry is in Manila. Good morning from Manila. Spent last weekend in Subic Bay at an old Navy base. Subic Bay was a U.S. Navy base when I was in the Philippines 50 years ago as a Mormon missionary. I never got to Olongapo, which is where the base is, but I did get up to Angeles City, which is where Clark Air Base is. And it's interesting, that was the place where I decided that what I would do after I got home from my mission was two junior and senior year ROTC and then go into the Air Force, which I did. At the time, it was hard. I'm not a military type of guy. I'm an engineer. But I've got to say that it was probably the best thing that ever happened to me. I mean, I thought I'd be a techie of some sort, but no. If you're wearing butter bars, you're the guy in charge. And I had 50 some odd enlisted people. who technically reported to me. Fortunately, between me and them was the chief master sergeant. He could handle all that. But, oh, what a learning experience for this naive little Mormon boy to go into the military. Whoa! Things I saw, got involved in. We were doing SAGE radar there. So the FAA ran the height finder, ran the search radar. The Air Force ran the height finder. The Air Force ran the emergency power plant. And the Air Force had its own ops room for height finding for aircraft and things. And there was some dumb idiot airman who brought his girlfriend into the squadron to show her around. And he left her in there to go to the bathroom. Well, as it turns out, there was an open safe. This is operations, after all. There was an open safe in there with classified material in it. So this was, quote, an exposure. And so I had to go to this woman's house at the direction of the commander and get a reading on what I thought might have happened. And I came back and told the commander, I'm not even sure this girl can read. So, gee, the things that happened in that place, crazy. I came in once, I happened to be there driving by at 6 in the morning. So I thought I'd stop the squadron, just jump in for a minute, say hi. There was nobody in ops. There was nobody anywhere. Well, there was a little battle staff support center where people could stay that had some bunk beds. Everybody was asleep in one of those bunk beds. Now, I didn't mind. I was the maintenance officer. I didn't mind if my maintenance people slept at night. I really didn't. If something went wrong with the radar, they could wake them up. Okay? But the ops people, a little bit different story. So, boy, that created quite the festoosh. But I was able to shield my maintenance people from any repercussions because I said, if the radar breaks, wake them up, they'll fix it. You know, so give you what, a 10-second delay? Like I said, this naive Mormon boy just off his Mormon mission to the Philippines going into the service. But like I said, that's one of the best things that ever happened to me was that experience I got there. Okay, the telescopic antenna for the little radio works best. It can also update the firmware on it. How do you update firmware on a telescopic antenna? Okay, I guess it must be the radio. Terrence says, I can't pick up anything from eBay. They've banned me. Someone stole my identity and did rather a lot of damage to me. All clear now, though, but the ban's still in place. I'm very sorry to hear that. That is no problem. I had somebody pirate my YouTube channel, and I never really fully recovered all the data after that, but YouTube assigned someone to me and we got this thing straightened out. It turned it into, well, just twice it was hacked. One time put up a great big logo, some of the best artwork, logo artwork I've ever seen, but it was for a terrorist group that were recruiting and wanted funding. I should have kept the artwork. I thought I did, but it was such a cool piece of art. Make a gamer proud. So there was that time. That was fairly easy to fix. They actually inserted all that in the title field, including the image. Then the other time, they turned my YouTube channel into sort of one of these infomercials that was on selling cryptocurrency and why you should buy cryptocurrency. And of course, I, at this point, had no access to the channel. So I had to get a hold of YouTube, and we got everything straightened out and put back in shape. The channel itself was restored, although I think some of the very early videos from 10 years ago may not be there anymore. And they also, since they had taken my Google account, had taken my email. And so I didn't want to give up the address, casler28@gmail.com. And you can contact me on that, and please do. Questions, whatever. I don't take phone calls because you can't talk to... Remember, amateur radio operators have a federal license to talk. We've all got one of those. So if I get a ham radio operator on the phone, we're 20 minutes to an hour. Okay, so please send me emails. I'll try to respond to those quickly. Although I did find a batch of emails from 4 years ago that had been chugged off to the side, maybe as part of one of these hacks. Anyway, I'm going through those. Some of those people have changed call signs since and all that sort of thing. I'm sure they've long solved the problem they sent to me, but some of those are interesting problems, so I've made videos out of them. Can't pick up. I'm sorry about the eBay. Of course, you can always start fresh as some other name or something. Got my FT857 back. I sent to a tech in December. Is it working? He mentioned the display control board shorted out and is still looking for a replacement. Have somebody else go on eBay and get you one. I tried to join Facebook. Never been on, but wanted to access Marketplace. Signed up. Sent some verification. Instantly banned for life. I didn't even get to log in. These people share their ban lists. Okay. So you've got to create a new email address. And it's real easy to do on Gmail. I think I've got like 3 of them. Okay. Charlie, Chris Wilson, same thing happened to my wife. Oh boy. I don't know what is wrong with these so-called companies. You got to remember, since they're gaining millions every day, they don't mind if they lose a few out the back end. They're not there to serve us. Remember, Facebook doesn't create any content itself. It relies on its viewers to create content. Same with YouTube. I'm creating YouTube content right now. And they sell that content with ads. By the way, if you watch this on later on, there will be ads in the middle. Not very many people watch. You know, there's nothing more stale than a day-old live stream. So it's like a newspaper. Let's see. Greed, incompetence, and laziness. Or all of the above. Olongapo has built up strong. The tankers are still there. Good. Terrence. Yeah, I make you right. Although eBay was my go-to place for gear, they've lost a decent customer. I usually go to Amazon. Anything you can get on one of these other channels, you can also get on Amazon. Although, I ordered some of these little driver transistors. Really weird number. Never heard of it before. And there was one company on Amazon that had them. And I ordered them, and it took 3 weeks to get here. And I'm a Prime member. So I went on DigiKey. Now, DigiKey sells mega quantities to mega companies, okay? But there's no minimum order. And the minimum shipping charge is like $6. So I ordered 10 of those transistors and 10 of those sockets. And they arrived here in like 3 days. DigiKey, I think, you know, it used to be you'd have a minimum $50 order or something like that. But now they're treating hams and makers and stuff like that really well. They'll sell you quantity 1 if you want. And they'll go stick that in a bag and mail it to you. And bless them. This is the receipt I got from them, or the packing slip anyway. And it got all kinds of information on it. Country of origin, China in both cases. Must have been here in the U.S. long before the tariffs went into effect. What I'm waiting for the other shoe to drop is the tariffs on Japan, because that's where much of our ham radio equipment comes from. And, you know, they just, for years, 10 years, a decade, ICOM's best-selling radio was the ICOM 7300. And I think I have sold my share of them because it's the reference station for my website. So if you go look at dcasler.com/reference, it shows you how to set up a general station. Every item you need, down to the power supply, the cable, the, you know, all this kind of thing. And it's the 7300. And they sold over 100,000 of them, they claim. Now, Yaesu finally came out with the, and I keep forgetting this. Let's go here and look at the screen and go to Yaesu, because I never remember the model numbers. Amateur radio, HF transceivers and amplifiers, FTX1, FTDX101, FTDX10. That's a new one. It's a mid-level radio. This is their beginner radio now. They also have the 991, which is quite an old design. This is a newer design, the FT710. This is designed as an ICOM 7300 killer. Well, you know what happens, of course. ICOM then came out with the Mark II, or whatever it is, for the 7300. They've added a small number of features, some interesting features, I might add. And in other words, they've updated it to go head-to-head with Yaesu. Yaesu finally has a radio. It used to be only the FT991. The FT991 is basically a super heterodyne with a separate little software-defined receiver to drive the display. Whereas the 7300 has an analog RF amplifier and filtering per band, and then it goes straight into digital. They have this incredible A to D converter, and then everything after that's done in digital. It's a very nice little radio. I asked a guy from DX Engineering at Dayton. One of the nice things when you deal with DX Engineering at their Talmadge, Ohio store, you're talking to a ham. And I don't mean a guy who just got his license yesterday. I mean a long-time extra-class ham who's a major contester or DXer. They know what they are talking about. And I asked them, I says, tell me true. The difference between the FT710 and the FTDX10. He said, roofing filters. Aha. It makes a big difference. The roofing filters help you withstand nearby strong signals from other bands. So like he says, you don't want to take an FT710 to field day because the other stations will bleed into it and so on. I have an FTDX 3000, which is actually the best receiver I've ever owned. And I get stunning audio reports on that. I replaced it with the 7300, because the orientation of the channel is primarily to new generals and extras, okay? And so that's why I've got the reference station and things like that. If I were going after the, mid-level extras or something like that, I'd be using the Yaesu with its roofing filters and everything like that. It'd be an entirely different channel. Okay, Longapo, right. eBay was my go-to place for years. Yeah, Amazon's mine. Clark Air Force Base now is a major airport. So they finally dug out the 3 feet of volcanic ash, I take it. Because it was a very good airfield. They launched B-50, no, they didn't launch B-50. B-52s came out of Guam. What came out of Clark were the KC-135 tankers. And I can't tell you how many times I've been in Angeles City and they have one of those stupid things go overhead. You got to stop all conversation and wait for it to go over. They're so loud. But they, anyway, they had a fine airfield. And then when Pinatubo went, it put like 3 feet of ash on all the runways. And and of course, you put that much ash on a roof, it will collapse the roof. So, did a lot. I've been through that area before, Pinatubo, of course. And it's interesting. Anyway, it was while I was at Clark Air Base that I made the decision I was going to go home and get in the Air Force. So now a major airport, I can understand that because it's an excellent runway. The runway that was down in Cebu, it's on an island several hundred yards off the island of Cebu, and they've built a big bridge over to it now. And that's where the Cebu airport is. It's an old American field there, and it's getting lots of good use. It's possible to get back on, but is it worth the fight? I think we're looking at, yeah. I'm fortunate that they got my channel fixed. There's a plaque somewhere that's over there about when I passed 100,000 subscribers. So I guess I rate a little bit of support when things go wrong. Terrence, I remember that attack on you, Dave. Glad it's mainly clear now. My attack was vicious. I was losing stuff from my laptop, banned from eBay, and our national lottery site, and lost money out of my bank. Eesh. That's rough. And just today, my wife had a pop-up on her screen on her iPad that you desperately need to clean your phone because it has 37,000 viruses or something like that. And I don't know how many times I've told her, don't do that. She did it. So we've been kind of playing catch up. I've been just simply removing infected apps. And the last time she did it on her iMac, she had me call the guy in town. Turns out the town mayor is an artist and also repairs Apple stuff. And I called him and said, what do we do? And he told me. And he says, now your wife has a habit. And I said, I know. So, if any of you have ever tried telling your wife what they must or must not do, you know what I mean. So anyway, we had a client who clicked on a suspicious email. Within an hour, they had SIM swapped the director's phone and transferred out $300K out of the trust account. There's all these. No, they knew I was hacked and showed no remorse, so I'll never bother again. Like Dave, I use Amazon Prime. I've been lucky so far, though I have had loans with Citibank taken out in my name cause some issues. Statute barred now, I think what he means is remedies is guaranteed by statute. I know my credit union has a guarantee that if somebody illegally takes money out of one of my accounts, they'll cover it. And the credit card I have now, my debit card, I think it's possible I'm actually going to keep it all the way to its expiration date. In the past, no credit or debit card has survived that long because they get hacked. And when they are hacked, it's not good. Oh, and of course they don't show any remorse. This is how they make their money. In Eastern Europe, some of the governments actually provide support for these people. And in India, where a lot of it comes out of, they turn a blind eye unless somebody puts a case in front of them that's so compelling that they have to do something about it. There's a YouTube channel with a guy, a hacker, in the U.S., whose hobby, if you will, is hacking back. He had one of these things where he's supposed to transfer some money from his account, and he accidentally reversed the transfer and took $30,000 out of their account and put it in his account. And they say, no, 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 you can't do that. You can't do that. He says, I just did. So anyway, he works with the government to identify and shut down some of these scammers. He's even hacked into their security cameras so you can actually see them at work. And this is their job, to hack people. And the governments love it because it brings in dollars. Lots of dollars. And people are so gullible. You know, the Nigerian prince scam, for so many years, everybody said, how can anybody possibly fall for this anymore? Well, they still use it. This is the one where this Nigerian prince has got $45 million in a bank account, but he needs some money to pay a lawyer to do something, and he'll share 10% of it with the guy and all that. Why do they keep using it? Because they know if somebody gets in touch with them, they're dumb enough to fall for the scam, even though the scam is extremely well known. And I got sort of caught up in a scam. I got an email from somebody who says, your doctor's authorized some genetic testing. And I actually went down to my doctor's office and says, is this legit? And the gal there said, yes, some people are doing that. Okay. So I went with them, and then it was just starting to sound like a scam. And they actually sent me the kit for the genetic testing. And I called Medicare, their scam hotline. And they said, oh, yes, that's a scam. Don't touch it. Don't be in touch with them. Don't send anything to them. Just absolutely ignore them. Well, the problem is this. They keep calling me. And how do I know it's them? Because I get a call from a number in Illinois, and I send that to voicemail. I get a call from 30 seconds later from Florida. Send that to voicemail. They never leave messages. Rarely leave messages. And so on. It's always from different places and people. One of the calls was from our local hospital. I'm going, okay, I have dealings with the local hospital. I'm old. Of course I have dealings with the local hospital. And I called him up, and I talked to the operator, and he says, now tell me, do you have any hospital numbers in this range of last 4 digits? And she says, no, we don't. So I knew that even though, because you can spoof the caller ID, and they had spoofed the caller ID. And so I don't answer the phone anymore, pretty much from anybody. If it's Loretta, I recognize her, but otherwise, every call goes to voicemail. And then I pick out the ones that are real and call them back. I do not pick up the phone anymore. I've thought about having my number changed. But the problem is that too many people know it and use it. I mean, it's everywhere. Except on YouTube. Okay. Glenn Martin says, N0QFT Glenn, hello from the far west Missouri area. 68 degrees, 78% relative humidity. Sounds like the heat has broken, finally. Chris Goodman, K0BLU, hello from St. Cloud. We're at 70 degrees and clear. Pondering ICOM versus Yaesu Tokyo Ham Fair. Yeah. Now, ICOM has built in a little problem for itself. If it really has built large numbers of the old 7300, they're going to have a problem getting rid of those because everybody's going to want the new one. So I think the reason they delayed it to the Tokyo Ham Fest was till they'd pretty much diminished their stocks of the old one. Now they can start shipping the new one, and they're directly competitive with Yaesu. And I know the guy who's the chief marketeer at ICOM. He didn't give me this radio, but I got it at the employee price, and I used channel funds to pay for it. Okay, howdy from North Texas, Chris Goodman. There is so much bureaucracy involved with getting a Japanese ham license. One cannot join JARL or JARD without a Japanese call sign, not to mention fluency in the Japanese language. The Japanese, remember Admiral Perry opened up Japan in 1850 or something like that? Well, baloney. They're just as insular as they always have been. The culture there is completely homogenized. You can communicate over there with a couple words and a look, and everybody knows what you mean. There's no diversity there. So, I mean, they've, of course, adapted. Right after World War II, they started selling stuff to the U.S., and it became a byword that if it was made in Japan, it was junk. Well, they heard of this Deming guy, who was an American, who talked about quality. And he went over there to Japan and talked to them about quality. And he was very persuasive, and the whole country adopted his techniques. In the automotive field, it's called the Toyota method, but it's the same kind of thing. It's Deming with a few modern additions. And finally, the American companies, who absolutely ignored Deming, wanted nothing to do with him. Ford knows how to make Fords. No, actually, it turns out they didn't. Okay. And so they got, GM made an alliance with Toyota, and now they use the Toyota method in the United States, and we have much, much better cars. It was, Deming's method is incremental improvement. Not radical redesign, but incremental improvement. And if somebody on the factory floor says if you tweaked this tool 35 degrees sideways, it could shave a couple seconds off the time it takes me to put this bolt on. And they run that up the flagpole, and they're looking for these. And the ISO 9000 came along. ISO 9000, there's 9001, 9002, and so on. But that series is about, does your process documentation match the process you actually use? He says you can't improve your processes if you don't know what they are. So ISO 9000 is built around this very simple idea that you say what you do and you do what you say. Okay? I went through an ISO 9000 audit when I was at Lockheed one time. Very interesting. People were discovering all kinds of things they did that were never written down. The next step up is CMMI, Capability Maturity Model. The I is for Institute, which is at Carnegie Mellon. And I've got their book somewhere. I did a whole bunch of work on this for IBM. The idea is you develop your processes, you make sure you're actually using them, and then you have a mechanism for process improvement that works, demonstrably works. And that when something is changed, it's changed in the documentation, and everybody does it. The classic story they cite is of a company they went to look at their processes, and the salespeople were filling out this sales form in triplicate. Remember those days? The green copy went through a processing change through counting, and the white copy went to the warehouse or something. I don't know. One went to finance. Anyway, the guy who got the green copy really, really knew this customer. And he knew that they would never order what was on that sheet. So he changed it to what he knew was the right stuff and then sent it down the line. So they ended up shipping the right stuff to the customer, but not billing the customer for the right stuff because they did not understand their processes well enough. There's another story about a company that put all their process diagrams on like a 120-foot long sheet of E or J or whatever the size is, standard drafting board, on a wall by where all the employees walked by on the way to the cafeteria. And what started to happen was what they were hoping would happen. People started making corrections. That's how they found out what was really being done in the factory floor. And which, after all, those wonderful executives in their nice plush offices, unless you founded the company, you don't really know what goes on the factory floor. So anyway, enough about that. There's also a mechanism, and I worked a project with this with the customer was the DoD comptroller, basically the DoD's accounting office. And they were having stuff fed in from all over the military. And terminology, a bullet meant something to the Navy and something else to the Army. Okay, and with the same names, or they had different names for the same thing. So they were trying to get that straightened out. There's a process called enterprise architecture where you document the as is. Then you document the to be. Okay, we're going to take these manual steps, computerize them into enterprise resource planning, ERP, enterprise resource planning. And we're going to do it all on computer. And then you create a transition plan, which takes them step by step from one to the other. And that's what we were doing. A lot of stories about that. But the thing is that IBM did this for Hershey. Chocolate. And they were ready for the Halloween season. And what happened in the system was when something shipped, the order went all the way back through the system to make more. Okay, and they had this all. But the idiots in the shipping department refused to use the system. They just took stuff from stock and shipped it. And so orders did not work their way back through the system. And no new chocolate was being created because there was no need for it. As far as the system could tell, the warehouse was full of it. Well, it was the warehouse people who were full of it. But anyway, there were lawsuits and all kinds of... Hershey missed that Halloween season because of this. Okay. To me, that's a firing offense. You just clear out the shipping department and start over and get people who are willing to go into the computer, find the order number and say, shipped. So that, boom, that creates, you know, it's like Walmart. You go into Walmart and buy a pair of socks. Before you get to the parking lot, a factory in China has got the order for the replacement socks. I mean, it's maybe not down to that level. Okay, a bag of socks, whatever. But it is down to a very tiny level. And so it goes through that scanning machine and it goes a number of places. Not only the cash register, but back to headquarters, into their databases, and the automatic ordering. When you buy something, you've also placed an order on behalf of Walmart for a replacement item to be shipped to their store. So it's really cool stuff. Anyway, I had a, oh yeah, let's see, I'm sorry, I got lost here. She who must be obeyed, yes. Well, I think to some extent, you know, if both parties in a marriage commit 100% to doing 100%, then you'll have a good marriage, okay? And David O. McKay, who was president of the Mormon Church back when I was a boy, said that you go into marriage with your eyes wide open, but as soon as you're married, it would be best if those eyes were half closed. We all have faults. And, you know, I made a, after my disastrous first marriage, which resulted in 2 children, 15 years, and damn near close to suicide, my boss gave me a recommendation. He says, you're going to be tempted by the same kind of person you married the first time. Marry someone completely different. And I did. Married Loretta. And I also made the vow that I would never criticize her either to her face or to others. And I kind of broke that today when I told you about this doggone scam thing. But anyway, I think we do pretty good. We've been married now 25, no, more than that. 1996, 29 years. Next year will be our 30th anniversary. So we've done pretty good. Okay, Japanese language. I had a message of 500, told my son, let me know, and it looked legit, a payment for MMD travels. Ooh, there's a mug from, yeah, okay. Hi, Dave, you're awesome. Thank you. I try to share. When I worked at Northrop right out of the Air Force, I found a lot of people who would not share. They knew their piece of the project and they weren't going to tell anybody because having that knowledge was their job security. I says, I'm not going to do that. I'm going to share everything I learned. And I compiled a book that thick on how that inertial measurement unit worked. I had block diagrams of every subsystem that I abstracted myself from the schematics. And that book became the course book for incoming engineers. And I put over 190 people through my 24 classroom hour course on what it was we were building, which was the most accurate inertial measurement unit known to mankind at the time. A fascinating piece of hardware and software. So anyway, Chris Maxwell's title is Minister for Finance, Entertainment, and Shoes. There you go. I had that same email and told security, and when they asked for a phone, I sent a number to Police Crime Division in San Diego. Okay, Travis, W0DTM. Dave, what are your thoughts on feeding a 10 to 12 vertical Solarcon A99 with 180 feet of RG11 quad shield? It's not the number of shields that's important. It's the thickness of the coax. I'll show you if it's still here. What did I do with it? Here it is. Here's RG58. It's got a copper braid shield, and it's not 100% coverage. So you're going to lose signal out of this. In other words, the losses are going to be high. This is LMR 400 by Times Microwave. It's kind of the Cadillac of ham radio coax. Okay, and if you're going to send it that far, at a minimum, you want RG213 or better yet, LMR 400. LMR 400 is stiff, a little bit hard to work with. But by golly, is it good quality coax. You get this stuff rated for direct burial and take it out there and don't fall for the Chinese fakery. Get this right from DX. Now, DX Engineering makes its own version of it. I don't know who makes it for them. They have a DXE 400, and you'd have to ask them, is that Times Microwave or what? Messi and Paolini make good coax in Europe, but the key is you want low loss coax, because 10 and 12 meters is high enough in frequencies that the losses in the coax start to add up. Okay, so again, talk to the DX Engineering people in Talmadge, Ohio. Tell them what you're trying to do. They'll recommend a coax for you. And generally, we want to run 50 ohm coax. I don't know what RG11 is. I had a Chris Wilson, a scammer in Ghana that I was playing, and was happy to purchase a one-way bus fare across the country to meet someone who didn't exist. Leave him find his own way back. Bonanza Fandango, this is heartbreaking. A new email address and phone number might be useful. Sounds like you and your wife's current email and phone number are on a call list passed around by fraudulent folks. Yeah, again, I've got a problem. When I upgraded to extra, I decided to keep my advanced call sign. My advanced, KE0OG is an advanced class call sign. It's not an extra class call sign. But I kept it because I was already published as KE0OG. And now I'm, well, you see the OG little thing right there. That's, my assistant made that for me on his press, or not press, 3D printer. And so, I don't know. Well, I'm very tempted to change my phone number. My email address seems to be sorted out. And I think I've trained Google well enough to get rid of the spam. And now, like I said, the thing I fell for when they started the cryptocurrency thing was some guy, and I get emails like this all the time. We would like you to review our product. Are you interested? I get those emails all the time. And so this was from what YouTube has a name for. It's a sort of a broker of sponsoring agencies and so on. So every inch of it looked legit. And stupidly, it says I can't open the PDF. And it turned out it was a malware. And that's what took everything down. But the older you get, the more you learn. Okay. My dad had an answering comment to press 1 for English. Travis, you can make a mag loop for 10 meters to 12 out of the RG11. Yes, you can. But you do need that tunable capacitor. Doug, Dave, unfortunately, changing your number will not stop calls. The spammers call numbers both in order of existence and from lists sold to them by companies and business to collect our information. Yeah, that's a problem. Although Doug Dry, his comment right here, Doug gave me this old model, I guess it's a Model 500, quite a conversation piece, an old-fashioned black dial telephone. And it's hooked to the internet. I can actually make and receive calls on it. I don't give that number out, so. But yeah, the only thing that works is to send calls to voicemail that are not in your contact list on your phone. Standard setting in iPhone. I don't know about Android. I'm going to have to audit my contact list. Chris Goodman, using the Chrome browser is essential for web page translation. Yes, it is. Dave, I spent a lot of time making sure all my doctor offices numbers and insurance company numbers in my contact list. You're on the right track. Chris, 73, have a good Labor Day weekend. Thank you, Dave. There are hundreds of companies called data brokers and resell lists of personal information. In my opinion, the FCC and FTC are not doing their jobs. Well, hey, capitalism, people make money. You know what? At one point, the IRS tried to buy this information because it's always, I'm talking 30 years ago. These companies that mail you stuff, I know I once bought a little bag of golf balls for my dad. And I used my credit card. Instantly, I was receiving junk mail for golf stuff. Instantly. So the IRS said it was going to go to these people because these people had a really good idea of what the family income was. And they wanted to compare that with tax returns. Well, there was a huge hullabaloo, but I think they went ahead and did it. I know what Social Security does. Social Security gets with Medicare, and they compare claims. If somebody stops putting in Medicare claims, there's a very good chance they're dead. And so they use that as a starting point to see if there are people getting Social Security checks who are dead. Occasionally that backfires on them, but it does. Okay. Let's see, Labor Day weekend coming up. Glenn Martin worked at Walmart in produce. We had over 7,000 navel oranges because of a system glitch. Wow. KI5 station here. Howdy, that fella Nick, Larry Fields, MYB. Okay, we're way over time. Thank you all so very much. I also want to reiterate our special that we've got going on right now. We'll try to keep going on for a while. If you become a patron through patreon.com, that first month, we're going to send you that because our lowest level in there is the electron level is $2 a month. I'll send you a $2 bill. This is real United States currency. The active currency that's out there is 1, 2, 5, 10, 20, 50, and 100. Those are the active currencies. You don't see these very often, but they're real. Usually when you get one, it's in pretty good shape because it hasn't been used very much. But so if you become a patron at the $2 level or more, first month you get a $2 bill you can amaze your friends with. I was looking at in my drawer, and I'm going, I'm not sure I can find it now. I found a quarter in there. I don't see it right now. Anyway, I picked it up. I was just going to throw it in with the loose change we collect and then exchange for Amazon gift cards. But it was a Susan B. Anthony dollar. I got to tell you, this was the mistake of the century, last century, was creating a new dollar coin that was the same size as a quarter. Same color, same texture. A dollar coin. Still legal currency, but if they want to ever hope to get rid of $1 bills, they're going to have to come out with a $1 coin that looks like a $1 coin. I've got some Kennedy halves here. This is a Kennedy half compared to a quarter. One's much bigger than the other. And the Eisenhower dollars, but the only place you can get those these days is Las Vegas because they have dollar slots. The Eisenhower dollars are bigger still. Now, you know, it costs more than a penny to make a penny. So they're trying to get rid of those, but every time they try that, people don't do it. When I was in the Philippines, it was 6.4 pesos to the dollar. And they actually had currency down to a single centavo, 100th of a peso. And they made them out of plastic. And the only reason anybody used them was for accounting niceties. So, okay, there we go. Answering machine before had a cassette, had an old C64 and copied a tone to it, and they stopped calling. Oh, so thank you all so very much for being part of the program this evening and listening to my ramblings and asking questions, and hope I was able to answer some of those. And so I am going to end this by saying, if you are not a subscriber, please subscribe. That doesn't cost anything. If you can join Patreon and spare $2 a month, that's $24 a year. Actually, you can get 1 year for a discount, but you'll get a $2 bill in the mail, which is essentially your first month back. And I thank you so much for that because, well, keeps the channel going, helps me pay my assistant, and so on. So, until we next meet, 73. How far are we behind? See, I'm looking at the clock on the wall here and the clock on the wall on the... I think we're about running 3 or 4 minutes behind. So I'll wait that long before I shut it off. I have a feeling that YouTube isn't sending this exactly synchronously to everybody, but, you know, a little here, a little there. Had a person today asking me if I were from Ohio, because I had that. So I told them about the Dayton Hamvention. I heard there were 36,000 people there this year, which is 3,000 more than the year before. Although I tell you, the Swap Fest was smaller. It was about 2/3 the size of what it was last year. They don't really have a good solution there for the swap people. They go out in the grass, it rains. It's just, and the water has trouble going anywhere because it really was the midfield of a racetrack. Now, if you see a $3 bill, that is fake. As funny as the $3 bills.